Don't throw the marshmallows in there.
Oh, it was a bad one. So all of a sudden a marshmallow raft came.
Okay, Grandpa.
No.
Okay, Grandpa.
Oh, you ready? What to do? It seemed like it was the end of Mike and Fred, the final chapter in their life. They just couldn't imagine what they had to do. The batteries on their flashlight, it was almost pitch black. The batteries on their flashlight were almost dead. Jones could hardly walk because his legs were so swollen from the bite of the oysters. And the two townspeople were no help. It was up to Mike and Fred to get them out of this predicament. There just seemed to be no way out and no solution. The earth was beginning to heave now, more violently. A big rock came crashing down and almost hit Mike, but he jumped aside just in time. And now the big rock fell down, and there was a crack that appeared at the shore. Because the earth had moved aside a little bit, there seemed to be a narrow ledge. So Mike jumped onto the rock and jumped onto the narrow ledge. He had one rope left, so he gave it to Mike, gave it to Fred. Fred held it taut, and then Jones went across from the rock, and the two townspeople, and they got on the narrow ledge. At that time, another quake happened, and the big rock that was in the middle that they stood on cracked in half and disappeared. And all of a sudden, there was a big whoosh, and the earth opened up. And what had happened is that the hot river went into a deep hole. You could just see it going, just like a drain on a tub. It all went down. And there they were standing. The earth was trembling. The river was really gone. And they could see the bottom was still scalding, but they knew that they had a chance to make a run for it. If they ran fast, they might be able to reach the ropes and get themselves out of the pit. So they tied themselves together with the one remaining rope, and they told everybody they've got to make a run for their life because they knew that it wouldn't last much longer and this earth would collapse on top of them. So with Mike leading the way and Fred bringing up the rear, the five of them made a run for the light at the end of the tunnel. With the river gone and sucked up by the earth, they knew they had at least a breath of a chance to get away. They ran as fast as they could. Jones stumbled a couple of times because his legs were so swollen, but he had a big heart and he really had a good will to live. So he ran along with them as much pain that he was in. They got to the ropes and they could see way up there that was more than 150 feet up. They could see people and the light in the sky. There was 4 ropes hanging down, but there was 5 people. So immediately Mike yelled up. He got 3 of the ropes around Jones and the 2 townspeople, and they started to raise them up slowly. But there was only 1 rope left. How could Mike and Fred survive with only 1 rope left and there was 2 of them? So Fred said to Mike, "You're stronger than I am. You go first. I'll stay down here. When you get up to the top, you can ice me up." So Mike started to climb out. He was really strong, hand over hand. He came up one raft to another, 50 feet, 60 feet. He kept going up and up and up. All of a sudden there was another tremble in the earth, and a big rock fell over and cut the rope, and Mike came plummeting back down into the cavern. Fred was lucky that he caught him, threw him to the side as another big rock came crashing down. And they could see half of the cave had fallen in, but there was enough room to get around. They started to dig frantically so that they could get around this big rock and try to get out of the cavern. It almost seemed hopeless because the earth was still moving and more dirt was falling on top of them. They knew that they had to get out of here, and the only way out was through that wall of dirt. So they took the paddle that they have left and they started to scratch and claw at the dirt with their hands in order to get out and around this rock. Finally, there was another shake in the earth, and the rock moved some, and they could see light on the other side. So they punched their way through on the dirt and the rocks, and they got out to the other side, and now there was a narrow opening. The last way that they could get out. It was no bigger than 10 feet wide, and here they were 150 feet down. It just seemed like the odds were hopeless. So Mike yelled up, "Throw us a rope! Help us! Throw us a rope!" Then they saw people at the end looking down. They didn't know, they couldn't see because it was dark down there, but they kept yelling. Finally, a couple of ropes came down. The earth shook again. They didn't know if they were going to make it or not. But they both grabbed onto the ropes and they had this will to live, and they felt them tugging and bringing them to the top. And they went hand over hand in order to make it faster and faster. And the earth trembled again, and they could just feel the dirt at their feet as one or the other side of the cave fell in and drug them down a little bit further. But they had the will to live. And so they hand over hand and they climbed up. Finally, they made it to the top. And then there was the final crash of the earth as it closed in and sealed off the Quake people forever.
I thought for sure that'd be the Quake people pulling them up.
I was waiting for the hot water to be a geyser.
Yeah.
Shoot him up. The time for fireworks?
Jeez, Dan. Dan. They almost like bump, 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 bump.